Should we do roll call?
Yeah, and I'll just make an announcement. This meeting is being recorded, including the chat box, and it will be posted on our website for the public to view. So I'll call roll. Supervisor Ann Malik. I don't see her on the list. Councilperson Lloyd Snook. Okay. Councilperson Michael Payne is here.
Here.
Supervisor Ned Galloway.
Hello, I'm here.
And John Lynch is Stacy Lundry is.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And that's everybody.
Okay, and is that a quorum?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to agenda item 2, matters from the public. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak, you can raise your hand in the Zoom chat, as well as if anyone's on phone at *9 to raise your hand over the phone to speak. And it looks like there's nobody who has raised their hand to speak. Last chance. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 3, the public participation plan.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, somebody raised their hand. We'll go back.
This is Paul Josie. I raised my hand. Am I being called on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment upon the proposed plan at Fontaine Avenue, part of the Smart Scale application. Is this the right time to comment upon that? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. I've been a resident of Fry Spring neighborhood for about 14 years, and I know this route very well. And I was concerned with, given this is a great gateway into grounds and into the university and also into the neighborhood, I was surprised by the widening of the asphalt. There's an existing median strip of a lot of mature trees that are looking very healthy, not probably about 10, 15 years old. And I was surprised by the turnaround lane, particularly, that was being designed and how significant of an impact it is from a entry standpoint. So it's already a very wide asphalt stretch with a lot of what seems like additional lanes that are very rarely used. And then to add a very big U-turn lane was, I think, possibly a mistake, and it looked somewhat undesirable as a gateway design. So that's my only comment, and thank you very much.
Okay, and is there anyone else? Again, you can raise your hand in the Zoom chat if you would like to speak. Okay, well.
Michael, I'll just mention that I have some comments too, but I'll save it until we get to that agenda item.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on then to agenda item 3, the public participation plan.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, but I promise I'll give it back, Lucinda. As you all are aware, we have been going through, is the PowerPoint up for you all? Yeah. Okay. Is it not up?
I do not see.
You see it?
It's in my agenda, but I'm hosting, so.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully.
It's not up.
It's not up. Okay. It's because it's on screen too. I gotcha. When I turned it so I could.
There you go.
Okay. When I turned it so I could see it and look at the camera at the same time, it messed everything up. Okay. So, so as you all are aware, we're in the process of updating the public participation plan. When we started looking over the plan, the idea was mostly just to update it to make sure that we were in compliance with our own organizational practices, and also look at what we were doing in regards to electronic communication and holding electronic meetings during the state of emergency. And so to make sure that our plan was still applicable and appropriate for all of those activities. So as you all are aware, we put together an initial draft of the plan. We put it out for public comment. We did the 45-day public comment period, and we got some feedback on it. I got a few emails. And so what became pretty clear based on the information we got back is that there were some pretty easy updates that we could go ahead and make based on the public feedback, but there's really a desire for us to spend more time making this more of a robust update and really just making it a little bit more timely and consistent with the other ongoing efforts that we are trying to implement to make sure that we are considering equity in our outreach and public engagement efforts. So on this slide right here, I have a summary of comments that we received back. I divided it up into simple revisions and substantive revisions. So the simple revisions were things that I was already able to just really quickly and easily add into the plan based on the public feedback, mostly just making sure that there was consistency between what the process that we follow to both amend existing plans and also to adopt new plans, and making sure that the same list of programs and plan updates were inclusive in both areas. Stacy actually pointed out that there were some inconsistencies in the language used, so I updated those sections. And then there were some requests that we add more references to social media as an outreach medium that we use, and also include a reference that community events and festivals, when we're not in a state of emergency and when those are held, we will also utilize those. So, so those were ones that were really simple to make, that we can go ahead and incorporate as revisions into this plan if you all would choose to go that route. And then there are these more substantive revisions, and the feedback we got was that the document needs to be less technical and more easily accessible for a wider audience. Reducing the use of qualifying language like when feasible or to the extent possible. Provide strategies to conduct outreach to the aging population and rural users of the MPO transportation system, and then to addressing climate change. Some of these may or may not make sense to include in the public participation plan, but that is a summary of comments that we got. I will note that initially when the technical committee and the Citizens Technical Advisory Committee reviewed this, I had included Smart Scale in the list of documents or plans. I included that as a simple revision, but looking back at it now, I don't know that that makes sense. Because basically all that is required for, or the only public engagement that's really emphasized for the list of planning efforts that are on those lists is a minimum public hearing requirement. And we can add Smart Scale to that list, but I don't think, my personal opinion is that that's not the best way to get engagement and feedback from the public around Smart Scale project selection. We could add it as a minimum requirement if you all want to direct us to do so. But as we're talking about developing our Smart Scale process, I think for now it makes sense to leave it out of this revision, knowing that we're going to continue to work on making more meaningful updates to the document. So tonight we have advertised a public hearing, so you will have the option to vote on the public hearing after we hold the public hearing, after you hear these any additional feedback that there might be. The options are that we can move forward with adopting the plan as it was initially presented to you all, that we can adopt the plan with the revisions that were recommended by the technical committee minus Smart Scale, or we could add Smart Scale to the list of projects, or we could table the discussion to wait and do a more robust update later. It is staff's personal preference, not personal, but it's our preference that we go ahead and do an update now, just to make sure that we do comply with the public participation plan moving forward as far as our organizational practices. And then we would look at opportunities to revisit our work program and allocate additional funding to do a more robust update by the end of this fiscal year. So, so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and then we'll just need to move forward with the public hearing, and you all can let us know how you would choose to proceed.
Are there any questions?
I have more a comment than a question, Mr. Chair.
That's fine.
I'm happy to do an approval and then the robust going if that's what staff is preferring just because it handles the procedural piece. My own response would be on under your list of ongoing activities and reading through that. I'm presuming if you want feedback inside of some of these bullets from us, now's the time to throw that out.
Correct. Yeah, let me pull up. Yeah, if there are specific revisions that you want, this is the time to make sure that we incorporate those with the language you want us to use. Do you all see, is the document up for you all?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was under on number 4, ongoing activities, the last bullet point.
Oh, okay.
I know how difficult it is when we talk about public participation and how many different tools and ways that we can go about getting public feedback. It seems to me that you're getting at one in that last bullet point about connecting with, and we all use interested parties or the quote unquote stakeholder organizations. It seems to me that we could be a little bit more proactive, pushing out and trying to get those individuals than just relying necessarily on, you know, citizens requesting inclusion. How do we, it's easier probably to identify public agencies or providers of freight services than it is private citizens. But I think that PVCC's Network to Work and their connectors idea and how they connect with responsible, or not responsible, but they identify individuals in the community and helping in their program. And that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, a primary push out to get those connectors to the folks that would be interested in what you're going after. I think there could be something to that that could be added in here to help with engagement. So I just throw it out there as food for thought.
Do you want us to try to draft language to include in this revision, or is that something you want us to think more deeply about for a more holistic update?
Seems like that would be a better conversation for the round 2, the more, if we're going to do a more robust study on it. But I think when we talk about public participation, I mean, it's the same in the county or in most places. You think, well, you hold public meetings, you make announcements, you post things on websites, you give people a way to sign up for lists. But if that's, you know, we've been doing that. So there's probably more interesting ways to go out and find the right people to be involved instead of waiting on them to find us.
Correct.
And I just offer that one example as a way to do that. There could be, or I imagine there are others. It would just be nice in thinking about it in that way that some thought could be given to that and be included in the plan.
Thank you. And just so you all have the opportunity to see it, I did this as the draft. The highlighted portions are the ones that were changed since you all got the draft that was in your packet. So I added language about utilizing community events, utilizing social media platforms. Let's see. The other ones added the long-range transportation plan to public notice from any major documents. We matched this language with the previous section, which was about adopting major documents, about providing notices to agencies and organizations that support or are affiliated with low-income and minority populations. So Mr. Galloway, I think that maybe is somewhat what you were referring to, but what you would be referring to is a much larger portion of the population to look for other opportunities. But that's a way to satisfy the requirements that we, not just satisfy the requirements, but meet the intent to be inclusive of those communities when we're doing our planning efforts. I think those were the most significant ones. And then we added the abbreviations to the acronym table. So that's what the document would look like if you approve it with the recommended revisions.
Are there any further? Go ahead.
Oh, we could open the public hearing And the board can also comment too.
Okay. I'll open the public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak at this public hearing, you can hit the raise hand icon in the Zoom chat. And if you are on phone, hit *9. All right. There's no one with their hands raised. Last call. All right. I close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board? All right. Is there a motion?
So I'll move approval of the public participation plan as amended, presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. And should we do a roll call vote? Or
Oh, I can do that, yeah. So Miss Malik, is Mr. Snook, Mr. Payne,
yes?
Mr. Galloway,
Yes.
and Miss Laundry.
Yes.
Is that how you say your name?
Laundry.
Laundry, okay, thanks.
Okay.
If I may, when saying this more robust piece, you had said that was end of the current fiscal year, so this could be back to us in like spring or something like that? Or?
Yeah, so what we need to do, and you'll see this, I don't know, we might want to talk about this a little bit at the end of the agenda, but what we'll need to do is we'll need to make some revisions to the Unified Planning Work Program, which is the document that communicates how we're going to allocate funding. And there are some reasons we need to be as specific as possible based on VDOT invoicing requirement changes. So we're going to have to amend that work program to allocate additional funding. So you'll see that request for the amendment at the next meeting. And once that is approved for the additional funding, we can get working on it. But my hope is that we would be able to complete the work by the end of June.
Thank you.
Okay, on to agenda item 4. Does anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. For rescheduling the November meeting.
At the last meeting, the board directed me to do a poll to find a better date for the November meeting because the meeting was scheduled right before Thanksgiving. And the poll showed that Tuesday, December 1st or Thursday, December 3rd worked for everybody except for Mr. Snook did not vote. And both of those times were at the same time, 4 o'clock.
Okay. Is there any discussion if anyone has a preference or conflicts that have come up with either of those dates?
I don't remember voting. What were the dates again? The 4th?
Tuesday, December 1st and Thursday, December 3rd.
Either are fine for me.
Oh, yeah, Ned, you didn't vote. Sorry about that.
It's fine. Didn't mean to call myself out. But either time is fine. I don't have a preference.
Okay. Was there a motion for either date?
If there's no objection, I'll just go with 12/1, Tuesday, 12/1.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, meeting is rescheduled. And the approval of the July 22nd, 2020 minutes. Any discussion or changes to the July 22nd meeting minutes? All right, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Move to approve the July 22nd, 2020 minutes.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, on to agenda item 5, formal resolution for MPO smart scale application.
So at our last meeting, we approved applying for the other smart scale projects, and the Fontaine Avenue project had some last minute changes to it. So the board wanted to wait until after those changes were made. And so this is a project that the MPO is submitting for smart scale funding on behalf of the county. So the board will want to decide whether they would like to submit this application as it is or not submit it. And I can pull up the concept sketch, the new one, and Chuck can go over it and answer questions. I'm pretty
All right,
sure.
this was the concept that we came up with for to try to fix some of the issues that are here at this interchange. Last round, we submitted the divergent diamond, but the cost made the project prohibitive to move forward. It wasn't selected for funding, and it was scored relatively low on the list. So what we did was we looked at the interchange and tried to see if we could reduce the cost and the right-of-way impacts to make the application more competitive. So this is the concept that we, traffic engineering and the location and design section developed to address both the traffic growth and the heavy movements and the safety issues that are currently present at this interchange. And basically, it's a partial DDI in that it crosses over the westbound left turn movements that free flow up onto the southbound ramp onto 29. And installs a signal at that crossover location. It also includes the multi-use path, shared use path through the interchange, which is something that's not there right now, just ends right at the ramps. And those folks would travel cross to the median and then run down the median and then cross back over on the west side of the interchange. The drawback to this interchange is that if you want to go mainly from either the northbound movement off the ramp to out towards Fontaine Avenue Extended, the reservoir and those places, you would have to make a right and go down to Ray Hunt and make a U-turn. Same way if you're coming from Fontaine Avenue Extended and you want to go northbound on 29, you would have to also go down and make a U-turn at Ray Hunt and come back. Both those movements are relatively low volume movements. So we felt that wasn't as impactful and would still operate effectively. The second slide, if you scroll down the page, Lucinda, this is the improvements that would be at Ray Hunt. We're adding a left turn lane and a U-turn lane. You still have a single lane that goes into the city. You still have the right turn, dual right turn lanes that turn into Ray Hunt Drive. And basically this would more effectively address the weave issue that currently occurs at the interchange itself right now, with people coming off the northbound ramp and going right into the through lane into the city, and it causes a lot of near misses and conflicts with that through movement coming from the southbound 29 ramp eastbound into the city. So overall, that's a gist of what we're proposing to do. And I'll try to answer any questions that people may have.
Are there any questions or comments?
I have comments, but why don't we go ahead and let others ask their questions first, and then I'll address my comments.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask a question of Chuck, I thought a very general but very worthwhile question came up at the Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting last week. And they weren't talking about this project in particular, but I thought it was very relevant, of being clear and identifying the objective of the project like this. I've talked with a number of folks about this project, and this is one where there are a number of benefits. You're addressing congestion, you're addressing safety, and you're also addressing that westbound turn movement on the I-64. My question would be, what would be, if there were one overall benefit of this project, what would that be? Or one need that's trying to be addressed as a priority need?
The safety at 64, that ramp, I don't have a way to address that movement right now. And the divergent diamond was one way to address that. It does the same thing that this interchange concept does. It allows that movement to operate almost free flow down, around, and back up onto the 64 ramp. Without signalizing that movement, there's not a way to put or build some sort of flyover. The loop ramp would basically have a tremendous impact on the Fontaine Research Park property, especially where the state police barracks are and the Forestry Service building is there in the back. Those buildings would be totally impactful because we would have to put a major loop ramp there, which would create a lot more conflict points and accidents even for that movement to occur. This is a way to safely address that movement, and it basically just takes the conflict out of the interchange, both 64 and this one. So that would be the most critical need that it addresses. We have queuing of tractor trailers on that left turn ramp because of the traffic southbound from Charlottesville that wants to get on 64 eastbound is directly in conflict with that movement, so they can't make that maneuver. And we've had some recently some fatalities there, probably in the last 5 or 6 years, where people have gotten killed making that maneuver. So this would address that and reduce that conflict and injury capacity. It also will accommodate a lot of growth that I know the research park is planning since the university, and I know Julia's going to mention that, that they're planning a lot of growth in the research park, and they're moving part of their facilities out here. So we took that into consideration, and we're still going to be able to accommodate that growth with this design.
Thanks, Chuck. Could you show a question came up on the chat from Alice of, and you may have to get some help from Lucinda to use the cursor, but how a truck that could no longer turn westbound would maneuver that ramp?
Okay.
Thanks.
Basically, right in the middle of the screen at the bottom where it says conceptual sketch, they would come down this ramp and then make the left turn right here at the interchange, at the bottom of the interchange, and then go across and then back up. And then they would go right on to 64. That ramp would tie right onto 64. It basically, that's what you can do now. No, the other direction, southbound. There you go. So you go up underneath the bridge and then back up to the south to 64, the 64 interchange. And the only time that movement would stop is when the left turn movement coming out of the city they basically would work as a two-phase signal, which the left turns would go on the ramp, and then the left turns the outbound movement from 29 from the city down to that ramp would go. So it would just be alternating those two movements.
Any further questions or comments?
So Mr. Condor has his hand raised.
Yeah, recognize him to speak.
Lucinda, do you have the document I sent in your email? Could you put that up so it'd be easier to see it? While she's doing that, this is a case where public participation was limited. I'm on the CTAC, and the first time I saw this was last week. So in a week, I redesigned the thing. I just finished it, as a matter of fact, just before this meeting. So what you see there is an overview. So what I propose to do is take the problem being the left turn for the northbound US 29 traffic to get westbound I-64. I propose a ramp starting just north of the intersection with Gold Eagle Drive on US 29. Ramp up, go over the southbound US 29 lanes, continue around, and then go over the eastbound I-64 lanes, and then ramp down and merge with the westbound I-64 traffic. This proposal would cost $16 million in construction cost, $1 million for design and project management, which is $17 million, which is $3 million less than messing with Fontaine Avenue. And this is a better solution to the problem because it is a free flow design, completely eliminates the problems and the traffic that wants to get on I-64 West from northbound 64 or US 29 does not have to navigate two traffic lights, one at the ramp to get on eastbound from southbound US 29, and also the one at Fontaine Avenue. It's much more direct, would work much better. And like I say, I had a week to do this, so you know, I could probably refine it a bit more given a little more time, but I knew this meeting was coming up, and I wanted to you know, show an alternative proposal. The CTAC did not recommend approval of this. It was the motion didn't carry. There were 4 abstentions, so it didn't carry. So it's not, the Fontaine solution leaves a lot to be desired. This would work better. So that's my 2 cents.
I would like to clarify, CTAC did not approve the Fontaine proposal that was put forward in your packet. They abstained from voting, so they just were not able to move any motion forward on it.
Are there any additional questions or comments?
Well, if it's appropriate, I can go ahead and provide my comments at this time. Julia Monteith, University of Virginia. You all know me from the policy board. We had a team of people at UVA who took a look at this and sent in formal public comments approximately a month and a half ago. And what I would like to do is just read those comments so that they're accurate. And then if you could go back to the concept sketch, so it might be a little bit easier for people to understand our concerns as I'm walking through this, that would be appreciated. And then if anybody has any questions regarding my comments, I'm happy to answer them. Can you bring it? Yeah, thank you. So the first one is UVA has purchased Fontaine Park and just completed a master plan to expand the park and add over 1 million square feet in a phased manner. The basis for this is to move the ambulatory clinics from the congested area of UVA Health to the park for better patient access and expanded facilities. The second one is we have concerns regarding various turning movements, and in particular, the flow for vehicles traveling North 29 to West Fontaine Avenue, having to travel through the intersection at Racy Hunt Drive. In addition to passenger vehicles making this movement, there's a concern about how that's going to impact flows into the park and create weaving patterns in this area. And so we would like to see that there's a different approach to the U-turn approach for anybody who's trying to travel west on Fontaine. 3 is there are a number of technical concerns that need to be addressed as part of the public comment process, including vehicle flows, pedestrian and bike safety, and constructability. And the 4th one is Fontaine is an entrance corridor into our community and a major gateway for UVA. We have concerns regarding delineators, Jersey barriers, and similar traffic management techniques that do not seem to be in keeping with the entrance corridor. And then just as a final comment, we just feel that this intersection needs a lot more scrutiny before moving forward. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions about the information presented there? Are there any further discussion or comments?
I'll just note that the Albemarle board made comments and asked their questions on this at the board meeting and moved approval for it to move to this step.
Is there a motion?
So I'll move that the, what's the word in here? Move approval of the smart scale resolution, the MPO submission for Fontaine Avenue project as presented.
Is there a second? I'll second. All those in favor?
Want to do a roll call on this one, Mike?
Yeah, let's do a roll call vote.
So Ms. Malik, Mr. Snook, Mr. Payne,
Yes.
Mr. Galloway,
Yes.
Mr. Lynch,
Yes,
Huh.
I finally joined.
And I will note for the record that obviously the Albemarle Board of Supervisors, they all did prefer the previous design, noting some concerns about this design, but ultimately deciding to move forward with it.
All right.
So the motion passed. I'll send you the resolution.
Okay. On to agenda item 6, discussion of electric vehicle charging station needs assessment memo and scope.
So as part of our work plan for this year, we are conducting a needs assessment for electric vehicle charging stations in the TJPDC area. So that includes the counties outside of the MPO as well. Mostly this is assessment and recommendations of ways that we can encourage the use and support the use of electric vehicles in our region. So I'm just bringing this to you as a discussion item to see if you have any comments or recommendations on it. We asked the CTAC and the MPO technical committee to give me more stakeholders to contact about the study, which they gave me a really good list. So I've been working on that. They also sent me some great articles and research papers as well. So that was really helpful. So I just wanted to bring this to you, see if you had any comments or suggestions on this study.
All right, are there any comments or questions?
Lucinda, this is John Lynch. I know the town of Culpeper was looking at something similar as well, which you may want to add them to the list, or if you desire.
Thank you. Anybody else? You can always email me too.
All right. If no one else has any additional questions or comments, we can move on to agenda item 7.
This is Chip's memo on the smart scale process.
All right. We briefed the MPO policy board a couple of meetings ago, I believe now, and have had the chance to have discussions with CTAC and the technical committee regarding future smart scale rounds. And if you'll bear with me, I will use perhaps the Fontaine Avenue as a example project where I think this type of new policy would be beneficial. What we're recommending, and we've received comments from both CTAC and the technical committee, we're going to be revising and coming back to you hopefully at your next meeting with a formal policy asking your adoption, that we begin to identify projects that the MPO policy board considers for future smart scale rounds, and consider starting that process much earlier than we have in the past. The past practice has pretty much been projects that Charlottesville or Albemarle saw as a priority, but did not have room on their application list. Each of the local governments are limited to 4 applications. And so we would move those into the MPO to apply for, in addition to very large projects like the hydraulic. Those have been a priority for the MPO and both jurisdictions for several years now. But what we would like to do is, as soon as the scores are out, which should be in January or early February, we begin to identify projects that either have been submitted in the past and didn't score well, or projects that we haven't submitted in the past but have gained in priority, and receive input from CTAC, from the technical committee, as well as from the general public of projects that are in VTrans, that are in a long-range transportation plan, but begin to move those forward on the application selection process. And what I believe this will do is allow us to provide more public input and community engagement. Again, using a project like Fontaine using a project like the Route 20 pathways, that we would engage the public. We would identify at least, well, I shouldn't say at least, at the most 2 priority projects that we would do an extensive engagement for, beginning 16 to 18 months before the applications are actually due. Making sure that we identify what the actual needs are, what the community's vision is, making sure that it meets the land use provisions around the area that the transportation improvements are scheduled, and move this forward. We believe that citizen engagement, community engagement will really help on bigger projects. Smaller projects we'll still handle the same way we've been doing. The other thing I would say is that this is solely for the MPO submitted projects. So if Albemarle County has 4 projects that they want to submit, we aren't trying to suggest that they change their process, or if Charlottesville change their process. We just think for the MPO. The downside to this is that to do an extensive engagement like this, we may need some technical expertise from a consulting engineer. Often VDOT has been able to help with that, but not always will they be able to do that. So if we can plan early enough, we would go to the local governments for funding for the consulting engineer to help out. The MPO can handle the facilitation, the community engagement portion of it. We don't have the expertise with traffic engineers, nor do we have the resources to hire a traffic engineering firm. The technical committee brought out that the very first year we do this would be a learning process and would be the most difficult for us, because we would have to know what projects we were after to go to the local governments for the resources to hire a consulting engineer in November of this year. And we won't have those projects prioritized until after January. So the first round will be a little bit difficult. We may have to really beg to get some help from VDOT, which they've been so helpful in the past. But once we get this system going, we should be able to plan ahead and be able to have those technical resources available to us. Again, we're talking about probably 2 of the 4 MPO projects every year would go through this process. The other 2 would go through a normal public hearing and public engagement process. We'll have this for you at your next meeting. We're still getting comments back from CTEC and from the technical committee, but just wanted to update you on it and answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions or comments?
Hey, just one comment, Chip, in terms of consideration, and Chuck may be able to elaborate a little bit on this, in terms of looking at, the projects, for smart scale. A lot of them, they have to meet a VTrans need. So that may be one of the criteria that you use to determine which projects you'd be looking for. And those that obviously that have been submitted already but didn't get funded would fall in that category. But also to try to limit some of the planning work up front. If, we do have a lot of STAR studies, planning studies for different quarters and different projects that probably would be good to have Chuck pull those together for consideration when we get into this process, just from a standpoint of being able to utilize some of the data that's already out there.
Certainly, thank you. Yes, that would be a great benefit.
And I have a question. I think I've asked this before, but I just can't remember. Is there sort of a rough ballpark of the kind of financial commitment that Charlottesville or Albemarle would need to make, or is it extremely dependent on the specific project?
I think it's very dependent upon the project. For instance, I'll start at the high end, and John and Chuck can correct me, but the consulting engineers for the hydraulic project were probably well north of $1 million spent on that. Zion Crossroads, we're currently doing a corridor plan there that I think is in the neighborhood of a couple $100,000. But it could be much smaller than that if it's a very confined area, and we're thinking that it could be as small as $50,000.
Yeah, this is Chuck. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Don.
No, you go ahead. You know more about this than I do.
Yeah, I was going to say it all depends on what the requirements are and what you want them to do. The original part of the hydraulic 29 project, where we did the small area plan and the traffic analysis for the first larger part that took like 18 months, we probably spent it was north of $1 million. It's probably about $1.5 million. For this latter portion, where we came back and we did some additional analysis and developed some additional concepts, I had the consultant work on those, and that was in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. For like the Fifth Street study that we're currently working on right now, or that's wrapping up right now, we looked at that corridor. It was over $200,000, and the same thing is for the Zion's Crossroads project. So most of them, depending on the size, is probably going to be somewhere in that ballpark, $100,000 to $200,000 to $300,000. And a lot of it has to do with how much public participation you want them to take care of for you. If you're just having them do the engineering and the developing the concepts and developing the sketches, that keeps the cost down.
And that's what we would be looking to do through the PDC and MPO, is handling the facilitation and community engagement portion.
Okay. And then one last question. When you referenced November, would that be like for this sample schedule for beginning in March 2021, that localities would need to make that financial commitment like this November to fit that timeline?
Well, the localities wouldn't have to make the commitment then, but we would have to make a request to the local governments at that point for the following fiscal year.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? All right. Moving on to agenda item 8, staff updates, beginning with the 2020 annual report.
Thanks. So these are just updates that I wanted to share with you. In your packet, there's the 2020 annual report that we submitted, the MPO submitted to VDOT, outlining the staff's activities for the year. And then the title plan draft update, the Title VI plan and the environmental justice plan needs to be updated every couple of years, and it's overdue for an update. So we went ahead and updated the plan. And if you look in your packet, let's see, the plan is here, and then I highlighted the changes in light and blue. And so, most of what we updated was just the tables from the census, the new numbers for our area. And when we went through the plan, the staff decided that we could do a more robust version of this plan. And make more public engagement and more outreach to limited English speakers. So we didn't have that in our budget for this year. So we wanted to just kind of update the tables now for this year. And then in future years, we'll go through and we'll add money to the budget to do a more robust plan and more robust outreach to minorities in our area. So this is not required to be voted on or anything, but I wanted to share it with you. If you have any questions or feedback, I'm happy to take that. And, you know, are there any questions or comments?
Hey, Lucinda, just a point of clarification. It is in the public participation plan that it will need to be voted on, but that will happen at the next meeting.
Okay. So yeah, so this is the first time you're seeing it, and then we'll bring it back to you in the next meeting and ask you to vote to approve it. Thanks, Sandy. So if there's no questions, I'll move on to the next item, which is the TIP Administrative Adjustment Memo. And this is the last meeting we had an amendment, so you had to vote on it because it was over a certain dollar amount. But this is a smaller amount of money, and it's just an adjustment. So there's no need to vote on it, but we wanted to share it with you. And this is moving 2 maintenance blocks, moving $6 million from preventative maintenance to safety and preventative maintenance. So it's not, it's just an administrative adjustment. So here's the 2 tables. The old table is on top of what was allocated originally, and then the new adjusted table is down below. So the amount is still the same. Oh, actually it's more. So they did add money to this block. And then the other adjustment is the second page in your packet. And this table, the very last table in here, was updated. So this is different. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let me show you the new table. So we did have a last minute change to that last table. So these 2 tables are the same as what was in your packet, but these 2 tables here for the maintenance, traffic, and safety operations did change a little bit. So in 2020, they added the $6 million. They took the $6 million away, and they added it to the other table up here. Are there any questions? I will get better at explaining these. Okay, so we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I'll change the.
To item 9, are there any additions anyone has to the agenda or other business?
Just real briefly, Mr. Payne, if you don't mind me just taking a second. Because we want to go ahead and get you all to be in a position to vote on the adjustments to the work program at the next meeting, what we will do is we will send out the information to you all ahead of time to review. If you have comments, you can respond to the staff, but hopefully we'll be able to get you all the information you need between, with enough time to review it prior to the meeting in early December, so that we can go ahead and plan to vote on those amendments at that time.
Okay.
Sandy, if I could recommend the policy board in the past, when we've done stuff like this, if you would send out both the original and the marked up version of what you're proposing, that way they can compare the 2.
Sure.
Would be really helpful.
I would be happy to.
Thanks.
Okay. Any additional items? All right. Hearing none, move on to agenda item 10, additional matters from the public. If anyone in the audience would like to speak, you can hit the raise hand icon in your Zoom chat or type into the chat. And if you're on phone, hit *9. I see no one with their hand raised to speak. So I guess we move on to adjourn the meeting.
So the next meeting will be Tuesday, December 1st at 4 o'clock, and I'll send out a packet and notice before then.
Okay, well, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.